Did I do what? No, I had to park on the street. It was full. You insisted? Oh, yeah, I just parked like a block up the street. It's okay. It wasn't far. I'm used to it. I see.
All right, 6:30.
Is that what you had?
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Gives you a deep bass tone. This evening we have two types of meetings. We're going to have a short public hearing on some performance management framework issues. Then we'll get into our regular public meeting. We have several issues here, and I think there'll be several presenters. So let me introduce the board. I'll wait for that. Why don't you do your thing, and then I'll introduce the board when we get to the regular meeting. Ms. Tyler?
All right. Good evening. So the following proposal to amend the PCSB technical guide for the performance management framework was opened for public comment on November 17, 2014, and will remain open until December 16, 2014. Any public comments we receive on or before December 16th will be publicly discussed at the January 26, 2014 public meeting, when the DC Public Charter School Board will vote on whether to approve the proposed updates. So the revisions to the 2014-15 PMF technical guide include, number one, adding some clarity to existing business rules. Number two, including tier cut ranges for the adult education PMF. And as per the business rules of the PMF, to introduce the 2014-15 floors, which uses a 3-year weighted average. This recalculation keeps the PMF in line with the current performance of schools. At this time, PCSB will not be introducing tier cutoffs for the early childhood PMF. I'll begin with clarifying the business rules that we're proposing to update. I'll summarize the updates to our floors, and I'll close with sharing our methodology for how to apply the tier cut ranges for the adult education PMF. So the following changes to specific business rules in the technical guide include, number one, a business rule for calculating the full academic year for the early childhood PMF. Number two, a business rule for calculating college and career readiness measures when schools don't meet the minimum survey response rate for the adult education PMF. We're also proposing to update the student achievement measure for the adult education PMF to include National External Diploma Program, also known as the NEDP graduates. We're proposing a business rule to exclude students with disabilities in non-public placements from high school PMF gateway measures, which include PSAT, SAT, and ACT, college readiness, and college acceptance measures. We're proposing business rules for how to validate data for the 9th grade on track measure for the high school PMF, as well as business rules for calculating the early childhood PMF attendance floors and targets. The floor recommendations that we are proposing are as follows for the applicable framework. So for early childhood PMF, we're recommending that the board increase the 2015 floor for the K-2 and or K-3 re-enrollment rate floor from 60 to 64.8. Just want to clarify that this is not for pre-K. It's just for K-2 and K-3 grades. We're proposing to increase the 2015 floor for the re-enrollment rate from 60.7 to 65.6. For the middle school PMF, to increase the 2015 floor for the re-enrollment rate from 60.7 to 65.6. We're proposing to increase several PMF floors for the high school PMF, PSAT performance, SAT and ACT performance, the college acceptance rate, 9th grade on track, and re-enrollment. And we're also proposing a decrease to the 4-year graduation rate floor. The final change and the most substantive one that I'm going to describe tonight is for the adult education PMF. So PCSB staff is recommending that adult education schools are identified as either Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 on the 2014 and 15 adult education PMF according to the following description. I've given you all a calculator just maybe to help you understand as I clarify some of the technical points. We use this calculator to project performance on the PMF for adult ed. So for Tier 1, which is our high-performing campus designation, we're proposing that campuses earning a Tier 1 status must meet or exceed a weighted range score of 65% on the student progress, student achievement, leading indicators, college and career readiness, and mission-specific goals indicators, and that's mission-specific if applicable to a school program. The weighted range score is determined based on the number of points earned for each PMF measure, which is relative to the floor and the target. For example, if a measure has a floor of 0 and a target of 100, and the school has 65% of students meeting this measure, and that's the only measure for the applicable indicator, the school would earn a weighted range score of 65%. Also, in order to be Tier 1, we're proposing that campuses meet or exceed the 50% survey response rate for all eligible career and college readiness measures. For Tier 2, we're proposing that schools must meet or exceed a weighted range score of 35% on each of the indicators, so student progress, student achievement, leading indicators, college and career readiness, and mission-specific goals, again, if applicable. And we're also proposing to require that campuses meet or exceed the 50% survey response rate for all college and career readiness measures. We would label a school as Tier 3 or low performing if a school did not meet the 35% weighted range score on any of the student achievement, leading indicators, college and career readiness, or mission-specific goals, or if a school does not meet the 50% survey response rate for all of the college and career readiness measures. You may ask why we didn't propose a standard cutoff range like we do for the other PMFs. As we've seen in our first 2 pilot years, the adult ed framework is different from the standard elementary, middle, and high school framework, and I just wanted to highlight some of the reasons why and why we proposed an alternative. Most of the targets in our student achievement measures in the elementary, middle, and high school PMF have aspirational targets of 100% proficiency. And to this date, we have not had schools receive the maximum amount of points for these measures with aspirational targets. For the adult ed PMF, in our pilot year, we had some measures where schools surpassed the maximum amount of points received.
It's a lot.
That's exciting.
Yes, it is. It is exciting. Another reason, Another reason why the adult ed framework is different, we also align our floors and targets to the 10th and 90th percentile of the previous year's school's performance. This methodology, our cohort is just simply too small. Last year we had 7 schools, and to calculate the 10th and 90th percentile for 7 schools is not a statistically reliable thing to do. We also have a limited amount of data to make updates to our floors and targets on an annual basis. We also see a difference in the framework because this framework allows for schools to create mission-specific measures. And for what we saw, all of the schools that proposed these all met the mission-specific goals that they met, and again, earned the maximum amount of points. We could set a numerical target, as we do with the other frameworks, but here's what would have to happen. We would have to go back to the drawing board with our task force, redefine our floors and targets for each and every measure. And I think to do that at this point of the year for the 14-15 PMF would not be fair to our schools. It may also undermine the idea that schools need to perform high in all areas. So we just want to reiterate, this framework needs to be a rigorous one to identify high-quality adult education programs that are preparing our students for success in post-secondary and career opportunities. We believe that schools need to be successful in each indicator, and I want to explicitly say what that means. A Tier 1 school is a school that does a good job at preparing our students for the GED and learning the English language by progressing them through the educational functioning levels. We measure this with the Student Progress Indicator. A Tier 1 school ensures that students are ready to take the GED and any DP and pass it. This is exemplified in our Student Achievement Indicator. A Tier 1 school ensures that students are coming to school regularly and take their pre and post tests to determine their success. This is measured by our leading indicators. Most importantly, a Tier 1 school follows up to ensure that their students enter employment with the skills to keep their job and to also pursue post-secondary endeavors. This is measured in our Career and College Readiness Indicator. These floors, targets, and Tier 1 cutoffs were researched by our partners at AIR and Timbo, and most importantly, voted on by a task force. The criteria we're asking our schools to meet does not depart from the national reporting system imposed by the Department of Education for adult learners. And our criteria for the Tier 1 cutoff for each measure was agreed on by our task force to be better than that of Maryland. Maryland has a large urban district that could be compared to the progress of our students in DC. Our Tier 3 criteria was characterized as the performance of the lowest performing states around the country. You may hear some public comment this evening asking us to lower the bar for what a Tier 1 program looks like in DC. I really urge you to think about the adults in our community who are out of work without a high school diploma who would greatly benefit from an adult ed program that I described earlier. We designed this framework to hold our adult ed schools accountable and to make sure the public is clear on what high quality looks like. The last thing I wanted to say is we don't expect schools to hit that 65% cutoff for each and every measure. There are over 15 measures on the adult ed PMF. We're asking that schools score 65% for the weighted range score for each indicator, which summarizes the progress on a variety of measures. So thank you for your time. I just wanted to make sure you understood the proposal. Any questions?
Thank you. Members, any questions?
I do.
Go ahead. No?
Wanted to ask about the college and career readiness indicators, particularly the ones post-graduation. So in terms of measuring the percentage of graduates who have entered the workforce and then retained a job 3 quarters following. And I guess I really just wanted to ask about methodology. So it's percentage. It's of the, I guess it's 2 questions. One is of the, so it's the percentage of those who graduated, or the percentage of those for whom definitive information could be?
So we have 2 business rules for that. We have more than that. We have students that are in the labor force, classified as in the labor force. We use the definition from the Department of Labor. Students who were in a program for 12 hours or more, and students who have exited the program. So once they exit, then we begin to track this measure. So entered employment or entered post-secondary happens after a student exits the program. Retained employment happens 3 quarters or 9 months after a student exits the program.
So the percentage, the denominator in the percentage is the number of students who have exited the program, or if there's a student who definitive information cannot be attained, where do they factor into that percentage?
So I mentioned earlier the survey response rate. So if a school cannot get a response from a student about whether they have a job or have entered post-secondary, they're not included in that rate. We do ask schools to surpass the rate of 50% for a survey response rate, which is similar to that required by the National Reporting System for adult ed schools. So the student you described, if we can't reach them, we don't know if they have a job, they would not be included in that rate.
So they would be in neither the numerator nor the denominator?
That's correct.
Okay, great. And is any, and the methodology then is strictly the response to the survey?
It is. We do have several schools, 4, who are interested in pursuing data matching with, I'm sorry, the agency is slipping my mind, to actually confirm the students have Department of Employment Services, to confirm whether students are earning paychecks, to do a matching of their USIs instead of calling them to verify employment. A lot of states use this methodology. The concern is, I said USI, I meant Social Security number. If the student doesn't give the Social Security number to the school, then we cannot do a match, and schools aren't required to collect that. So it may be a challenge for some schools, but it is something we want to pursue.
Okay, thanks.
With the adult education PMF, which I'm really excited with my colleague out in the audience about, can you briefly talk about the level of input that we got from adult school leaders, so just like get that on the record?
So I get to be a part of many task force groups working on the PMF, and adult ed school leaders, I would have to say, have the best attendance at our task force meetings. They're so diligent with sending me their comments. They're here tonight to share with you as well. So I get a lot of feedback from them on just about everything that I propose. They're active and really involved in making this a strong framework.
Okay, great. And thank you for your service, adult leaders.
They'll be up shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, I have 2 adult leaders. We're going to do 2 minutes apiece. And after that, I have Julie Myers signed up and Sarah Navarro. Anybody else? Well, let's do those 2 since they bothered to sign up, and then we'll see how we're running on time for anybody else. So if you just come on up. Hi, Julie. Yeah, come on. How many? Let me just see a show of hands. How many? 1. I see 1 other. Is that it? Am I missing somebody in the back? No? Why don't you come on up then too? Then we get all 3 of you.
And I have copies for all
Great,
of you.
thank you. And if you just introduce yourselves when you get the mic.
I'm Julie Meyer, Executive Director of the Next Step Public Charter School.
Sarah Navarro, Director of the Maya Angelou Young Adult Learning Center.
And I'm Andrew Schwab. I'm at the LAYC Career Academy.
Thank you. Before you get started, who's keeping tile?
I will.
Right there? Okay, keep your eye on her.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick, but not talk too fast. Thanks for having us. So, as you heard from Rashida, PCSB is proposing a structure by which the adult ed schools must obtain a Tier 1 or 65% score in each of the 5 framework categories in the PMF in order to achieve a Tier 1 status. So this means, in effect, that our schools are going to be tiered according to our lowest category. In other words, we can hit 65% in 4 categories, but if we don't hit it in the 5th one, that's how we're scored. We feel that really negates the totality of the PMF and really makes a mockery of all the hard work that everyone has put in, staff, but also the school leaders, into creating this comprehensive framework. And we feel we should be scored on the totality of the framework, not on one category. It would be possible under this scheme for a school to score 80 and land in Tier 3. It's also possible for a school to barely score 65 and be in Tier 1. So among other things, we think it will be very confusing to members of the public and anyone looking at the raw score and the tiering system. Apparently, this was developed for 2 reasons. Many adult ed programs were landing in Tier 1 in the pilot, and PCSB wants Tier 1 to be aspirational. Also, apparently, many schools created kind of a slam dunk mission-specific goals. but we, the schools recognize that these may be problems, but we don't think the proposal is a good solution. If scores appear high, perhaps that's because you have a very strong group of schools, I would suggest. Many of the schools offer really GED plus. We're not just traditional adult ed. We offer all the comprehensive services that GED students traditionally need. Also, if the PMF is too easy, rather than having a skewed tiering system, we are willing to revisit floors and targets. The threshold for each tier could be adjusted. The tiering could be postponed until we come up with a more satisfactory solution. And we believe that you all, as our regulators and the public, can rely on the 100-point scale until we come up with a better tiering system. And I will just highlight also the category that you asked about, Mr. Seufer, is still of concern. Schools that don't reach 50% of our exited students, and that includes students who came to our school for less than a week. And it's challenging reaching our students, believe me. Schools that don't hit that 50% reach rate will automatically land in Tier 3. And in my opinion, that's landing in Tier 3 for really not achieving a kind of administrative task, not because we're not doing a good job as educators. So we would ask that you not approve this proposal, and that even though none of us want to do more work on the PMF, that we go back to the drawing board on the tiers.
Thank you. We may come back to you with questions, but
Okay.
stick to the time, and I promise you we'll get back to you with questions.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to actually, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go ahead and skip over the first part, which is the rationale behind why I don't think this is the right proposal. I think Julie covered it really nicely. And I'm just going to launch into what I think should be done in lieu of that. So the first idea would be just aligning it with the other frameworks. An average of 65% across the board seems to make sense. It allows for some variability in schools and communities, but it still ensures high standards and high rigor. If the board is not willing to consider that, we recommend instituting a relative model for college and career readiness. So we operate in Ward 7. Our students are from Ward 7 and 8. To give you an idea, the unemployment rates were approximately 15% and 18% respectively, as compared to other wards which have fewer than 5%. And as you know, this rate only includes those actively seeking employment and doesn't really look, and isn't even looking at it by age. So our students are 17 to 24 years old. They're in Wards 7 and 8. The odds are really stacked against them in terms of employability. So given the statistics, and that's not to say that we don't want to and do everything we can to get them employed, but given these statistics, we propose that the metric be modified to measure growth from baseline data by location, and as opposed to setting a hard target across the board, which disadvantages schools that are really trying to serve the most difficult students in the city to serve. We'd be happy to work with experts in the field and the board to develop a robust measure. Like Julie said, we've been working on this, but we'll continue to work on this. We think it's really important. Since the board stands firm on its desire to track post-secondary outcomes of all students, which we absolutely agree with, we want to know what our students are up to. We feel that it's necessary to adjust what constitutes a program participant. I think, again, to Mr. Seufer's point, there was an assumption that maybe a program participant was a program graduate. No, we're actually required to track everyone who has been in our program for 12 hours or more. So for the Young Adult Learning Center, that equates to just a couple of years of programming. So we'd like to revisit that. We would recommend that a student should complete a minimum of 180 hours at the Young Adult Learning Center. So that would be 30 to 60 days of programming, depending if they're a half or a full day student, in order for them to really be included in our metric. We feel like in that month, we can reach the student, we can get them some skills, even if they don't graduate, we can put them on a better path to employability, and we should be held accountable for them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We want to second the original points made of requiring 65 or 35% for all categories, all 5 categories, and being knocked down to tier 2 or 3 just by missing out one category. A school could be 100% in 4 categories and 64% in the 5th category and be knocked down to tier 2, whereas a school that scored 66 across the board would be a tier 1 school. Those 2 schools, in my mind, would not necessarily be equal, but based on this criteria, the second school would be ranked better than the first. And we also have concerns about the career and college readiness measurement and reaching 50% of students is a challenge. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of energy for all the schools, and then we also have concerns about the 12-hour criteria of a student. Basically, at our school, that's 2 days, and as much as we try our best, it's difficult to reach a student in 2 days in 12 hours. So that's really a difficult criteria to reach as far as counting that student. So we support most of or all the ideas that were expressed earlier.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was interested in the notion of baseline data by location. Could you speak to that a little bit? Could you explain it?
Sure. So, I mean, I think what I've been trying to do is drill down the data a little bit more. If we look at our population of 17 to 24-year-olds, when they come to the front door, what's their likelihood of becoming employed? Is it, can we say that it's 5%, it's 12%? Let's look at what it really means for that group of young people, and then let's set an aspirational target that's well above that. And then we can demonstrate that we have moved the needle. I think that we really need to focus on growth as opposed to absolute, because we know that these young people have been out of school for years. Their job prospects are low in their own communities. We're working very hard with employers to get those opportunities in place. But let's allow them. Let's see that incremental growth. And I think that we could work together with some city leaders. I think we could get those data, and we could put together a really robust framework that would be really smart and innovative. And I would love to be involved in that process.
What's your thinking about by location?
By location, because wards 7 and 8 are, where, if you look at employment rates by location, these are where our students are coming from. So we are choosing to serve.
The student lives in.
Mm-hmm.
Got
Yes,
it.
the ward that the student lives in.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have a sense of what the current or recent data on employment rates is for your population?
I have reached out, I have the more coarse data in terms of what I shared, 15, 18%. But I think, if we drill down a little bit more, I don't have those figures yet. I've reached out to a number of people, and I'm trying to refine them.
And I ask that because I'm wondering, is some of this just because it's sort of a bit of an unknown quantity, and we're not sure what the numbers or the
I think
scores are going to be?
some of it is that. There are some folks that have some data. I think it's about compiling it and really spending the time to look at it and slice it in the ways that we're interested in looking at it for our particular population.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so what is our schedule here on?
We're coming back in January?
Rashida.
Yeah, Rashida, what's the schedule here?
So you all are voting on the framework next month. Our public comment period ends tomorrow. So these comments, in addition to any others we may have received or receive tomorrow, will be included in the final proposal that we'll share with you next month.
Okay, and I don't want to rush. I think at least for me, and I'm not schooled in this area, there's some valuable things to look at. And normally what you do is you prepare a status report that says, here's the comment and here's how staff responds to it. So we will have a chance to do that. And they have a chance to talk with you in between now and then. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll give copies of their comments.
I have some of that.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Okay, well, that concludes our public hearing. And I'm ready to open the public meeting. First, I introduce to my right Rick Cruz, a new board member, Sarah Mead, Scott Pearson, who's a non-voting ex officio executive director, Darren Woodruff, vice chair, Don Soifer. We have one other really active committee, and that's the Finance Committee, which he heads, and Barbara Knopfler. Can I get a motion for the agenda?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Is there any members of the public, or first, are there any elected officials? Usually that's from the neighborhood commission. Are there any elected officials who want to address the body? Any members of the public? We'll have another public comment period at the end of the meeting. Okay. We've got two sets of minutes. Could I have why don't we just have one motion on the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes, both minutes.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And as normal, I just want to read the $25,000 and over contracts into the record. And I'd like to do the same with the DC bilingual technology plan. And now I move to, we have two charter renewals, applications for approval or denial. First one would be Cedar Tree, and that'll be followed by Paul, PCS.
Hello, my name is Sarah Medway. I'm a Senior Charter Agreement Specialist with PCSB, and I will be presenting the two renewal analyses from staff, but before I do that, I will let Cedar Tree introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm LaTanya Henderson, head of school for Cedar Tree Academy.
Good evening. I am Monica Ray. I am board vice chair.
Welcome.
Okay. For both of the renewals that I'm presenting tonight, staff analyzed the schools according to the following standard. The School Reform Act requires PCSB to renew a school's charter, except that the board shall not renew a charter if there's a finding that the school has not met their goals and academic achievement expectations, or if there's a finding that the school has materially violated the law or its charter. Aside from that, PCSB is required by the School Reform Act to revoke a school's charter if there's a finding that the school engaged in a pattern of non-adherence to generally accepted accounting principles, or if it engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement or is economically non-viable. To give you a quick overview of Cedar Tree's programming, the school opened in 2000. It underwent its first charter review in 2006-07, during which the board found that the school met all of its academic and non-academic standards. In 2008, the school applied for and was approved by the PCSB board to assume operations of a closing charter school in the district. In January 2012, there was a second charter review of the school in which the board voted to continue the school's charter, although it did note the low rigor of the program and a low re-enrollment rate. In February 2013, the school made a major change to its programming, and at that time it submitted a petition to amend its charter to do a few things. First, to terminate its contract with Mosaica, that had been its charter management organization over the course of the past 13 years. And also to reduce its grade span from pre-K 3 to 8 to serve only students in pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, and finally to adopt the early childhood PMF as its goals and expectations. PCSB has reviewed the school's performance in the three areas: academics, compliance, and fiscal standing, and staff has found that the school has met the renewal standard. In that it met all of the goals related to the early childhood PMF, with the exception of two that staff invalidated for technical reasons, and that it partially met another goal. And so because of that, we find that it substantially met its goals and expectations. Given, though, that the school very recently restructured, PCSB, and given that PCSB couldn't fully evaluate their performance in early childhood math, given that technicality, PCSB staff recommends that you renew the school, but only that it be renewed to operate pre-kindergarten and kindergarten grades. and also that PCSB will closely monitor the school over the next 3 years to ensure that it is continuing to meet its goals and academic achievement expectations. At the end of that 3 years, PCSB may elect to conduct another review. Questions?
Would you repeat the part again about the pre-K 3 to kindergarten in the recommendation?
Sure. The school has expressed interest in growing up, and you can clarify that. But PCSB's recommendation is that at this time, the board vote to renew the school's charter so that the school will continue operating only pre-kindergarten and kindergarten grades, at least for the next 3 years, until we've had a chance to more thoroughly assess their performance as an early childhood school.
And then what are the options after 3 years?
At that time, well, Cedar Tree always has the right to submit a petition
Right.
to amend its charter, to expand its grades, and PCSB would be open to having that conversation in 3 years.
Members, any questions of the staff or the representatives of Cedar Tree?
Yeah, I'd be curious just to hear, from you all, maybe briefly an overview of your academic program. And I'm curious, given that it's just pre-K and K, what's the path for your students after they, move into first grade and beyond?
We're working very hard to prepare them for first grade, where parents ask us all the time, what school do you recommend? We're just working, we don't necessarily recommend a school. We do work with our local charter schools in Ward 8 to ensure and hope that our students will be able to go to those schools. We have worked with Chantel and other charter school leaders to make sure that our kindergarten program will and does prepare them for first grade. So we feel very confident that we're getting students ready for first grade.
Okay. Any particular challenges that you're encountering or positive features that you would want to highlight?
Well, I do want to go on record and just thank Sarah and Aaron. They have been outstanding in helping us through this process, and it has been a process, but they've been extremely helpful, and we're very grateful for all the support that these two outstanding ladies at PCSB has given us. And definitely we face the challenges that most of the schools in Ward 8 face. We are struggling to get our school kids to school every day on time, and struggling to make sure that they're ready to learn. And we're just excited about the challenges that we face every day.
So Sarah mentioned the school's aspiration to potentially add grades in the future. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that, but also just to hear about, looking forward to the next, 3 years until the next time we'll review you, but 15 years is the length of the charter term. What are your goals for seeing improved outcomes for the children that you currently have as well in pre-K?
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again?
What are your goals for the progress that you'd like to see for the preschool and kindergarten students you currently have? And also to talk a little bit about your aspirations to grow.
Yes, our goals for our current students is really to help to make sure that they achieve, basically getting the foundation. We are committed to building a solid foundation for our students so they can be very successful when they reach first grade, second grade, and beyond. We didn't have a problem, and we don't have a problem with PCSB's recommendation of the 3 years. We want to grow because parents want us to grow. Parents want to put their child in a school where they know that the school will continue to add a grade and they can call that their home. They want that, and we recognize that, but we're also dedicated to having a program that's solid, that's a solid program, and we're okay with the 3-year wait to make sure that our program is the absolute best in the city.
And when you think about how you'll know that your program is achieving those goals, what are some of the data that you'll be looking at to do that, and where would you, how would you hope to see them change in the next 3 years?
You will see our test scores just beyond, going just beyond expectation in terms of the PMF. We will continue to meet all of our PMF goals, which adequately, I believe, and I was on that task force to help develop the PMF goals for the early childhood with PCSB. And I believe that you will see our children exceed our PMF goals, and you will see that the data will represent what a great job we're doing.
Great. Why don't we, I'd be glad to entertain a motion if there are no more comments.
I make a motion that we accept the Cedar Tree renewal for another 15 years.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Nope. Look forward to visiting your school, though.
Thank you. Please come out
All in
anytime.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank Paul, PCS.
Okay. I'm going to now present the staff's analysis of Paul's 15-year renewal report. It's the same analysis, seeing whether the school met its goals and academic achievement expectations, maintained its compliance, and managed its finances properly. The school began operation in 2000, actually as a conversion from a DCPS school, through the work of the school's founder, Cecil Middleton. And it remains to date the only school to convert in such a manner. It started with a 7th through 9th grade program, and it's now expanded down to 6th grade. And its middle school program focuses on a AAA program in academics, arts, and athletics. And it's currently growing its high school up. This is its first year. It now has a junior class, and it'll graduate its first class of students in 2016-17. 15-16. Thank you. In July 2013, the school adopted the performance management framework as its goals and expectations. The school historically has been a very high performer on the PMF and has scored in the Tier 1 range over each year that the PMF was offered. And so PCSB and the school agreed to this amendment, and that the school would meet a certain benchmark on the PMF in 2013-14 to be eligible for renewal. This was complicated this summer because OSSI received a complaint regarding test integrity at the school, and because of this, decided to investigate the school's test integrity procedures and found that the school had improperly erased stray marks on tests. Based on that finding alone, OSSI invalidated the school's middle school test scores and has not published the school's test scores to date. Additionally, at that time, OSSI chose not to calculate the school's median growth percentile, which is a really important part of the performance management framework. So this affected their performance management framework scorecard, and that PCSB could not publish an official scorecard for its middle school this year. It also didn't publish a official scorecard for its high school because it's a new program, and this was the first year that they had the 10th graders had tested. It also affects the school's renewal, given the recent amendment to adopt the PMF as its goals and expectations. And so PCSB staff reviewed the record and analyzed the school's performance. And we actually we were able to calculate a provisional PMF score based on the data that we had available. We actually had available to us 2013-14 results, proficiency results, and we used those unvalidated and used that to calculate a provisional PMF score. Because we didn't have 2 years of median growth percentile data, we traditionally use 2 years of data to compute a school's MGP every year. And in this case, since we did not have 2013-14 MGP data, we solely used their 2012-13 data. So using those pieces of data to calculate the provisional PMF score, we found that the school scored a 61%, which was well over the standard required for renewal for this year, which was a 45%. Given that performance and given their Tier 1